and I chair the House of
Is the
Finance Committee.
microphone on?
It is on. Should I speak more loudly?
Yes.
Okay.
Put it closer to your mouth.
Even closer.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So, a warm welcome to everyone here at the University Women's Club. I'm Sarah Lavers and I chair the House and Finance Committee. But most importantly, I'm very lucky to count Andrina as a very good friend. And we are delighted Andrina chose this venue to host the launch of her book. Andrina is, as many of you know, an absolute trailblazer, an innovator, and also a fearless and inquisitive explorer of mind and body. And tonight she's going to share with us some of her experiences through her life and give us some tools to guide us through this miraculous, if turbulent world that we live in at the moment. And the choice of this room and this club is also very apt. This club was founded in 1886 by trailblazing women. Our founder members include the first ever surgeon, female doctor allowed to be registered, notably Elizabeth Garrett Anderson. And it also includes a Victorian artist called Barbara Lee Smith Bodyshaw. And if you went to the Tate Britain exhibition on Now You See Us, about retrospective of female painters through the time, she was there. She was also the founder of Girton College in Cambridge. And at the time the club was founded in 1886, women had been allowed to go to university. For the first 9 women went to university in 1868, but they could take the exams, they went to lectures, but they were not allowed to graduate. And that, in fact, the first university to allow women to graduate was actually London University in 1888. And Oxford and Cambridge, wait for this, they did not allow women to fully matriculate and graduate until 1920 and 1947, hence the club. I'm glad to say those days are way behind us, but this room also has an interesting history. We were lucky enough to purchase the building from the Russell sisters. So Lord and Lady Russell lived here and redid the house under Wyatt, and his, I think Lord Russell had a little study through there, and his daughters held salons here, Flora and Diana. And had you been here at the salons, you would have rubbed shoulders with Henry James, the painter, Sargent, and of course the 2 sisters at the time, because they were family friends, notably Virginia Woolf and Vanessa Bell. And it is in fact Virginia Woolf who famously said, every woman should have a room of her own, a room of one's own. And to us members, this club is home from home. This is also one of our favourite rooms. You can come here and read the books, have tea on the red sofa that's normally here, and just take time to ponder life. And this is what Andrina is really also bringing to us, taking us back to our homes, finding the techniques to live within that and just find that inner space. So I'm going to now pass over to Vicky Barker, who knows Andrina extremely well. Now, Vicky's another trailblazer. Vicky is a well-known broadcaster. I think I'm right in saying that you were in Baghdad before the war as a foreign correspondent. You also covered the Arab Spring, and you are a writer. So let me pass the baton over to you.
Oh, Sarah, thank you very much. Beautiful introduction. So, Dina, I suppose the genre of Dina's book is in that mind, body, spirit, self-help, spiritual development genre. This is a genre about which I know absolutely nothing. I am not an expert on self-help books or books about spiritual development. What I am an expert on is Dina Woodham's. 30 years ago, I think just about to the day, I was flying from London to Berlin to cover the German elections for CNN, and I sat next to a man on the plane, and I started talking to the man on the plane, and I never talked to men on planes, but he said, "Oh, you're a reporter for CNN. I've got a friend who's just started breaking into television. Could I put the 2 of you in touch?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Stuff like that never happens, but he did indeed put us in touch. And Dina had met Edward on a plane, and she never talked to men on planes. And all we can do is thank Edward for bringing us together. And the Dina that I met 30 years ago was just as charming and gentle and beautiful as you see her now. But if you will excuse me for saying it, I did ask her permission to say this, she was a bit of a cardboard cutout. She was charming, she was beautiful, she was the daughter of a wealthy man who had been raised with no higher expectations than to be the wife of a wealthy man. And wealthy fathers have a habit of, or inclination to sometimes lose all their money, and wealthy husbands often tend to come with hidden price tags that make it not so much worth the while. And when I met her, she'd been hired by the BBC, which had just gone to 24-hour broadcasting, and they threw her on the air to be a business presenter. She'd been behind the camera a lot. She'd never been on camera, and she would call me for reality checks like, well, they ran out of scripts and told me to just talk for 2 minutes. It's not no, that's not how it's supposed to be. And after a while, being in front of the camera and talking about fairly arid business topics was clear. Oh, are you there? Yes. Was clearly not working for her. And she started pursuing some other projects that brought her to Vienna. I'm really sorry I never did come to visit you in Vienna, because she was living in the Habsburg Palace and would say, you really must come stay with me. We'd have to share a room, but it's a very big room. And then one day she came from Vienna and we met for tea. And Dina had changed from being this sort of two-dimensional, beautiful figure. She suddenly almost left a trail in the air as she moved. She had become multi-dimensional. And I said, Dina, what's happened? And she said, well, I've started studying this thing called Tantra. And please excuse me if I hope I'm not offending anyone. Before my brain could stop me, I could hear my mouth saying, but Dina, Tantra is for sad, seedy people who want to have 3-hour orgasms. And she said, no, about 1/3 of the people want to improve their sex lives, and 1/3 of the people who come are hoping to meet their next partner, but about 1/3 of the people come are interested in doing the energy work. Well, from Tantra, she just never looked back. And after a couple of marriages didn't work out, she did something incredibly courageous that very, very few of us, I think, in that position would have done. She chose to look at the fact that she was 50% of the problem, and that it was the same issues that had come up, and she basically chose to face her fears. And honestly, I think following that path ever since has just taken her to some extraordinary places. And I can't tell you how much I admire the journey that she's been on, the integrity that she has shown every step of the way, and the almost Zen-like ability she has to remain centered while living a life of almost constant flux. So I guess what I can say is in this book is 30 years worth of the lessons that Dina has learned, the pain that she has endured so that you don't have to, and a message that is presented. This book is as gentle and its message is as strong as Dina herself. And I hope all of you get a chance, if you haven't had a chance to immerse yourself in this book, I hope you do get a chance to as well. And all I can do is move it on to my dear friend.
Thank you so much, Vicki. When you said you were going to, that if I didn't mind, you were going to talk about me. I didn't realize you were going to talk that much about me. Now, I just realized that I think that my notes have gone off with yours. That's it. So just because, as seems to happen in my life, I had everything prepared to be talking to you, and then some extraordinary things happened in the last 2 days that made me decide to throw everything away and had me up writing about 1 o'clock in the morning to readjust what I was going to say to you, because it brought me to a deeper level myself. But what I want to say is thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you very much, Sarah, for inviting me here, and for the introductions, and for Vicky, and really for every single one of you, because it really moves me to see you here at the presentation of my new book, which is called Embody, as you can see, The Power of Presence in an Age of Distraction. Now, and of course, wait a minute, because my pages are out of... Wait a minute. There we go. This is very funny. There we go. All right. So the first thing everyone asks me when I say embody is they say, well, what does embody mean? And it's a very good question, because it's something that I never really considered until, I began the process of embodiment. And it really is the culmination of many decades of deep work, as you said, in Tantra, which left me also working in transpersonal therapy and somatic healing and body awareness, and really a very almost secretive 16-year apprenticeship with someone that I would be called a teacher in the exploration of consciousness, way before anyone really talked about this. And at the same time as I was working, I was learning so much from this person, but I really kept it to myself. And this book is the first time I'm really presenting it to the world. So I'm excited about it, and I'm a little bit scared too at the same time, because the core message is even more relevant today in these turbulent times that we're living than ever. And I'm a little bit scared because I'm concerned that some of you might think it's a little bit out there or woo-woo, and it's anything but that. I wanted to distill it to make it as most pragmatic as possible so that everyone can bring something of this. I would love everyone to leave a little bit different than they arrived, and to be a little bit more comfortable with themselves, to be able to relax a little bit more. And if that happens, I've done my job. So when you talk about embody, the word body is in that. And we don't really think about our bodies that way, because our bodies, we always think that we need to do something with our bodies, or that they should look a certain way, or that you... but the truth is, the body is the one thing that we have from the day we're born to the day we die. And it has one MO, and that is to take care of us to the best of its ability for all of our lives. We don't really think of the body that way. And when you see the body that way, no matter in what state the body is in, you start appreciating its deeper wisdom, because it's really there to try to take care of you to the best of its ability. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be showing you what this means to embody. But the important thing is what you take out of it. And that is to make you relax more. And when you see all of these turbulent things that are happening in America, and there was just the American election, and there's the emotional overwhelm, and never mind the impact of AI on our lives that we don't even know, and that's only the beginning of that, then of course everyone is a little bit nervous about what's happening in the future. It's unknown. And so it's even more important to be able to relax within yourself, because even though you might not like other opinions that people are saying, can you be okay with that? Can you come home to yourself? Because that creates dialogue. It means you can meet people where they are. And it means that we can have conversations again, and we live in a world where you have, AI, which is really, because of just the nature of AI, which is pulling everyone apart. So in order to understand what's going on, no wonder we're going crazy, because we're living in these times of transformation. There are a lot of good books out there that are talking about, that we have trauma in our muscles of our body, and there's also great books talking about the creating new neurological pathways in the brain. But a lot of these things are trying to understand things, but it doesn't actually help you. You read the book and then you say, oh great, well now I know that I can make new neurological pathways in my brain, but so are we doing that, and how does that work? And what embodiment does is it actually takes these concepts and suddenly, before you know it, they automatically start happening because it's a natural process. And so when people say, yes, you want to have mindfulness and meditation, but then, people, it becomes one more thing to do, and we're all too busy. Life is exhausting, and who needs to have one more thing to do? And that's because we're handling it from the mind. And the thing is, the mind is actually the problem. When you come home to the body, then everything shifts and life becomes much easier. So it's because it's a shift of consciousness. And for some people, they might know this word, but for other people, they think, what is consciousness? But it's a shift that's so big that it'll take you out of your current understanding of life. And it takes you into a new state of being that you never expected was really possible. Now, because it's a very difficult thing to talk about that, I thought, okay, well, maybe what I can do is talk about history, because this isn't the first time this happened. Now, this is Copernicus, and about 500 years ago, he's the one that said, right, okay, now, we aren't, that actually the Earth revolves around the sun. And everyone went, what? That's ridiculous. And it created a bombshell, because it was not logical what he was saying. And of course, there was a lot of disruption that happened, but what happened was that people began to shift their consciousness and to expand and to say, oh, okay, into a larger understanding of reality that was always there. It was just that until that time, people had thought about it in a different way. And so this is exactly, what's happening with us, because, when this occurred, and everyone did this shift, well, humanity sprung forward, and suddenly there was the Renaissance, and there was the development of science and culture, and so we're in this period of time right now again, because with technology, it's just starting technology. It's going to be taking us to places that we can't even fathom. Now, the challenge with all of this is that we're operating from an old system in our brains. And so we need to upgrade our human operating system to be able to manage, these upgrades that are happening in technology. And that's what's behind a lot of the cause of the strife and the disruption that we're happening in the world, is because old ways are disappearing and the new ways haven't appeared yet. And so this is exactly what's happening, is this shift of consciousness. So hang on, I have to put this here because I need to find my second page, which is here. So we are in transformation, full transformation. I think everyone can agree with that. Now there's, as Vicky has said, no one understands transformation better than me. And it's because I'm from Kansas, the Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. So, here we go. Anyone who knows the story of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, there is the tornado that's taking her house, and it sends her to, the land of Oz. Well, I'm the actual Dorothy, because I was used to tornadoes when I was brought up, because of sweeping away the old things that we always thought were stable and creating room for new. And I was actually swept away from my home at the age of 14 to live in Brazil with another Brazilian family. The way I was brought up was very different from my own family. And really, for the next couple of decades, I was searching to come home. But what happened is that the home that I was looking for wasn't in Kansas, but it was in myself. But because I hadn't made that shift of consciousness yet, I was thinking like everyone else. And I said, well, if I want to go home, then home must be a location on Earth. And so I lived in 10 different countries, and I learned to speak 6 different languages. But wherever I went, there I was, not feeling like I belonged. So I said, well, clearly this is not working. So I said, okay, well, the next thing is that it must be what I do. So I threw myself into what I was doing, and I worked in wildlife films, and then I became, as Vicky mentioned, unexpectedly a producer and presenter of BBC World Business. And the more I worked, the harder I worked, the more disconnected I felt. So I said, okay, well, it's clearly not what I'm supposed to be doing, so it must be love. So I got married once, I got married twice. I had even the little girl's dream of finding a prince and living in a palace in Vienna. So there I am in the palace for a few months, and more miserable than ever. So in the end, actually, everything was stripped away, and I got cancer. And it was a deep melanoma on my cheek. It was life-threatening, as well as disfiguring. And at the same time, I lost most of my savings in fraud, and my parents had passed away a few years back, and I also lost my home. Actually, my friend Margaret was, helped me get better from all of that. And Vicky helped me move, in fact. And Vanessa helped hold the reins of my company. So I had all of these girlfriends help me along the way. But when everything was stripped away, I had to make this realization, this shift. And that's when it brought me deep within myself to these realizations that I'm sharing with you today. I understood it up in my head, but I hadn't made the shift of consciousness to be able to live from this place within myself. Now, the good news is that, and it's really what this book is about, is that this is a shift that all of us can do. It's available for anyone. And it's a shift of consciousness. It's a change of direction, not outwards, because that's how we're built to be, but actually inwards, into ourselves. And I wrote 2 novels about this. They were as page-turning as my life. But when I began talking in conferences and meeting these wonderful people who worked in tech conferences and they're wanting to help the world, I realized that my novels weren't good enough to be able to give them what they needed, because I saw lots of people that were wanting to make shifts in the world, but they didn't know how to do it, and they were destroying themselves doing it because they didn't have any trust in the world, and they felt like time was running out. And I said, well, where is the trust? And that's when I realized I had to write this book. So let's go back to Copernicus. One of the things that happened after Copernicus discovered that actually we go around the sun was that you were able to go into things right from the minute to the maximum. So there it is, right? There's the atom, and everything, all the electrons are going around the nucleus. And you can go even bigger than that. So you have the Earth, which is going around the sun, and it continues as far as it goes. There's the galaxy, and that would be our sun. Obviously, it's not our galaxy. But even our larger sun is going around another galaxy. It continues. Now, there's one thing in common in all of this, and that is a center. Everything has a center. It's a place where all movement begins. And now this is the thing which is really life-changing. This center we all have within ourselves. And it's this center where you can be living from. So what happens with this shift is that it moves you from, normally we live from our heads, right? And so, everything that happens to us, we're up here. And it's a shift that lowers your gravity down inside of you, so that you actually live from a place which is right here. Now, it's not physically in the body, but you access to the body. Now, because I'm from Kansas, I call it home. And what happens is that when you're living from down here, the heart can open, because if you're living from your heart, a lot of women, we're told to live from your hearts, but then you're pulled and tugged in every different direction, and the heart ends up closing, and hearts don't like being closed. But when you live from here, everything aligns as it should be, and the mind becomes the tool that it was meant to use, to be used as, and the heart can stay open, and you're living from this solid place within you. This is the shift that I'm talking about. So that's where everything is making, sense. And embodiment is this process of lowering your center of gravity. I talk about it a lot in the book. I'm not going to go into it in great details, because together with all my story, if you want to find out all the ridiculous things I did while I was going through my own process, it makes it accessible to all of you. So someone said, they said, oh yes, you were being very open about it. But I thought it is important, because there's nothing really to hide. So I'm going to go over exactly, what things are, so I can just bring this all together. Here we are, right? And I just want to say one more thing that might make you think about things in a different way. You're not your thoughts. Okay? Your thoughts are created by your mind. You're not your mind either. You're also not the stories that you tell yourself. And lastly, you're also not your body. Bodies are going to come and go. Bodies are going to get older. You are that which contains it all. And this is a physical process of coming home that's accessible to everyone. If it seems a little bit out there for you, read the book and I think you'll understand it a bit more. It's a process that you start on. But this is your home. And by the way, martial arts has known about this area for thousands of years. They call it the dantian. In Japan, they call it the hara. It's the place where all movement begins. So, but for me, that's home. Now, the process of pulling things away is kind of like an onion, peeling away the layers that imprison you. It's the identity with your mind, but also it's preconceived ideas. We think about things in a certain way. It's self-judgments. No one is harder on ourselves than ourselves. No one is. I have yet to meet a single person where I have to say, oh, you should be harder on yourself. No one is. We are far too harder on ourselves. We're far too tough on ourselves. And those that are even very tough on ourselves, when they think they need to do it, they have to feel like they have to do more. And that's exactly the opposite. Self-criticisms, aren't we all very good at criticizing ourselves? You know, I am. I love it. I can be very demanding on others and demanding on myself. And then there's outdated family and society values that I think that we've been seeing a lot of turmoil about that's occurring now. There's rejections to it. There's people wanting to go forward. So that is what's happening. It's just a bigger picture of the turmoil so that you can start understanding why these things are happening. So, when you are embodied, you are this triangle on the left. And it means that most of you is on the earth. And then that little point up there is your mind. So you're still accessing your mind. It's the tool, but you're not living from it. It's not torturing you. And you're in connection with something that all of us have in common, which is the earth. Something which creates an enormous sense of stability. And that's why when people say, well, take a break, go to nature, walk, sit, meditate, it's because it allows this natural process of embodiment to occur. It's a natural process. So this is living from the mind, and that's living from the body. We are almost done. This little smiley face. This is for people that are suffering a lot from social media and distraction. Live like that. So they take their definition of self from what people are saying about them, or from the latest influencer, right? It's so easy to be able to have, who am I? And it's very difficult if you're ever feeling that kind of wounded feeling inside of yourself because someone has said something or they're describing you in a way that you don't like. You're up in your mind again. You're up in your mind again, okay? You just have to kind of take a breath, and with the tools you'll be able to come down to earth again. Because this is living from the outside in. And with embodiment, you become this little smiley face, which means that you're living from the inside out. It's really quite something. It's a shift that's extraordinary. It means that you don't have to worry about boundaries, because no one can squat when you're inside. You don't have to worry about loneliness anymore, because you're only lonely when you left yourself. So if you're feeling lonely, you can come home again. There's this place that's like a safe reservoir within you. And I'm talking because it really is there. It never leaves you. You might leave it, but it never leaves you. But the best gift of all is the fact that you're that little happy character there, is that when you are living from this place within yourself, you realize that you are the gift. There's nothing you have to do to make anything better. Your personality, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. You're not going to be able to change your personalities or your egos. We're stuck with them, okay? What we can do is learn to live with it and live from a deeper place that contains your personality. Kind of like living with a bombastic uncle in your head. Oh no, there I am doing myself again. And you start being more compassionate with yourself and more understanding. And that means that you also become more compassionate and understanding with other people too. And when you realize that there's nothing you need to change about you, and that your work is only just how you share yourself with the world. There's nothing else that is available to you except for just to enjoy your life, because that is what all of this is really about. You're sharing yourself with the world makes you into the gift of who you are. And when more people make this shift inside of themselves and start relaxing inside of themselves, the center will hold, because it happens day by day and person by person. So the more people that make this shift and the center holds, that's how you change the world, one person at a time. Thank you very much. Is there, ask lots of questions. Is there anything that, or any, does it not make sense to anyone, or they're shocked? Yes.
What still challenges you?
Everything. No, well, it's actually a very good question, because as I said, as an American, it doesn't matter what politics are. I did not vote for Trump, for example. And the following day was a very heavy day for me. It was really heavy. I had to call some other friends to understand what happened. And it knocked me off center. And I said, oh, this is how I used to live my life. You know, I was not trusting, I was worrisome, I was fearful of the future. And the extraordinary thing is that because I know the process, I said, I'm out of my center again. I'm up in my head. So by the next day, I woke up and I was fine. My eyes are open. I see what's happening. It's not that I'm being Pollyanna, but I started to understand things from a bigger picture that allowed me to be okay with it. I might not like it, but I can understand it. And I think it's very important, once again, is that all of this polarization is happening because, for me, AI is just the unconscious mind, on steroids. And it was created by an unconscious mind. It's not its fault. But when you go and you're being distracted by being online, you're up in your head and it's kept on saying, well, try this and try that and look at that. And it doesn't make you feel good at all. So one of the things, the best thing to do is to stop being online so much and to being more with yourself. But I would just say that was something that happened recently, that it was 24 hours and now I'm back and stable again. So it's not that you make this shift and then you're this guru on high. On the contrary, it makes you more vulnerable. I can share my story, my vulnerabilities far more now than before, when I was much more attached to my ego because I had an image to portray to the world. I was much more like a swan, that you kind of see floating on the surface and my legs paddling underneath. And it realizes there's nothing to hide because we're all the same, really. We're all the same. Another thing it does is these concerns with gender or age or culture or religion, that all goes away because that's the clothing that we're wearing. It's as simple as that. And you don't even have to worry about it because it's just me from here connecting with someone else from that spot. And so therefore it always creates a sense of connection. And I think that in today's world, we're all in this together. We're all walking along this path together. And we need to find ways to be able to bring each other together so that we can go forward into the future with open eyes. And I feel very emphatically about that. Building bridges toward each other is very important. And embodiment is a great way to do it. Yeah?
Thank you, Andrea. I was interested to know, you've touched on a recent challenge, but I'm interested to know, what was the experience like bodily for you before you had your transformation? And obviously it was a process, it wouldn't have just been sort of binary points in time. And what's it like now? For example, you mentioned, you realised you got off centre, Trump had got in, but when you talk about the body, what's going on for you in the body, pre and post the kind of transformation?
It's a great question. Well, I lived with a permanent knot in my stomach, basically, because I was always worried about something. I was worried about the trash in the world. I was worried about wars that were happening. I was worried about lots of things that I couldn't control. And I had lots of judgments and things. I was very tight, I think I would say. And this process of embodiment is you need stillness. You need to sit with yourself. That's why you need to create distances. Especially, in the book I talk about doing a digital detox, so that you create time with yourself. And for me, I sit with myself, or I try to sit with myself for about an hour a day. I'm the world's worst meditator. So, but what meditation is just sitting with yourself. And it's like sand coming down in the body. I feel it. And suddenly I start feeling very hot. So if you've ever had body work or whatever, or sometimes you feel very cold, or you have cold feet, it's because you're not in them. I have cold feet. I still do. It's because I'm not in my feet. So what you do is when you're also, that's why people like doing exercise. It's because it gets those endorphins going, and suddenly you're becoming much more bodily aware. The only thing is, if you do exercise, make sure you do it consciously. Don't be listening to music or watching something or a podcast, because then you're pummeling your body again as you're doing that. So the process is, I would just say, it's a sense of being solid. And when I look at every person that I see, everyone has something that they're doing on this earth. Some little spark, some little piece of the puzzle that they were meant to give. And when you connect with yourself, then you tap into that spark. And then you just keep doing it all of your life. You'll do it in relationship, you'll do it in work, you'll do it if you're cooking. There's no separation in the world. The mind separates, puts things in different boxes, but the world doesn't. And so therefore, it allows me to connect with every single person, because the deeper I'm in myself, the deeper I see all of you. So I always will connect with every single person I'm speaking to from that place. And I kind of feel myself as like, this little sparkle does. And people smile. And that's wonderful, because they've forgotten that they're up in their heads, or that they were upset, or that their body, so much that we have that is going to go. Bodies fall apart, we get older, we die, but that spark of who you are is eternal. That stays. And I can say that from experience. And that's very, very, very powerful. It gives you this sense of eternity, even though I'm going to be in a body that dies. Sure, Cindy.
How can any body be so sort of centered and grounded when the brain, the mind, is so predominant and hyperactive?
It's also a very good question. Someone said to me once that the stronger the ego and the mind you have, the better it is to let go. It's very hard. It's very hard. What I can give you is that I think I have found that there's a lot of tools that are out there that actually take you away from yourselves rather than bring you to yourselves. Because there are all these demanding things that just aren't real. You talk about these gurus doing whatever they say, and you say, oh, come on. Of course I'm upset. Of course I'm feeling emotions. That's part of our humanity. But so you aren't going to change your thoughts. That helps right there. What you do is you observe your thoughts. So you see, and you start questioning your thoughts. Your thought says, well, this is going to happen like that, and that's going to happen. The mind talks in very emphatic tones. But you can say that there's another part of you, because who's the person in you that's talking to yourself? Right? So there's two people in you. So every time you're talking to yourself, it's the bigger you talking to your mind. And I write about it in the book, about when I had that first experience. And of course I thought I was going crazy. But what happened is that every time I'd have an experience, it would help me understand and broaden my understanding of reality. And the more I broadened it, the less I identified with my mind, and the more I identified with this part of me, which is all there is. And both are important. Does that help? Okay. Alessia.
First of all, congratulations, and I'm just so honoured to be here, and I'm so excited to read the book. I think the timing of it is just impeccable. I'm a strategist, you know that, and I can see what's happening in the world in terms of AI, and there's a lot of naysayers around mindfulness and spiritualism, and how would you answer the question if someone said, what's the difference between embodiment and mindfulness?
That's also a very good question. The deeper essence of mindfulness, of course, is beautiful because it is about connecting with your awareness, going deeper into the body. The challenge is that most people haven't understood that, so therefore they're doing mindfulness from their mind. And so therefore it becomes one more thing to do, because then not only are you supposed to be an no matter what's happening to you, and meditating and doing all of these things, then you're telling yourself, but I have to be mindful about this. So it becomes very exhausting. So there's nothing wrong with mindfulness, but the way it's done is often through the mind. And I found personally that when you do embodiment, using the body as a tool, everyone has this body. It's an easier, more relaxing way of coming into yourself, because it naturally flows into a place of yourself that you just don't. It makes you find yourself funny, and that's very good. It makes you also feel much more grateful. But I do find that there's a giggle that's in embodiment, which is, we need to laugh more. We need to laugh more. Yes.
Well, therefore, would you agree that when one is facing a dilemma and one is thinking, well, now, shall I be sensible and do the right thing that is sensible, something that the old-fashioned nanny or bank manager might tell you to do, or shall I go bloody crazy and do what I want to do and follow my gut? Is that what it's about? Following your gut? And does your gut know you better? And is that the idea? And in the spirit of Dr. Gabor Mate, who I'm a huge fan of, is that actually inherently the best way to avoid disease?
Well, I don't know about the latter part of your question because I'm not a doctor. What I can say is that Gabor Mate actually learned from the teacher that I worked with for 16 years. Mm-hmm. She's an underground teacher. And so, when I saw him developing, I'd already been doing that for about 10 years. The work he did was very similar to the work I did, and it takes you beyond the mind. What I would say is that it's in between both, because you don't want to act in reaction to something. You want to actually, when you're centered, you see both sides, and then you know what the next step is. So it's not like, right, I want to go crazy, because then there's almost like a rejection of that. Or, yes, I have to be sensible, and that's your mind and how we were brought up. And what this does is it brings you to a place of centering within yourself where the answer appears. And I can guarantee it's not what you're thinking it is. There's one thing I can guarantee that I've seen is that it will take you in directions that you never expected, and that are always true for who you are. And that might not be who you think you are.
Help.
Yes.
Hi, Trina. I'm really interested to read the book, and congratulations. Where do hormones sit in this? Because sometimes they fuel your mind in crazy ways, and they're actually coming from your body. So, just wondered, had you thought about those?
Well, yes, it's also a very good question. Once again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't really give you a proper answer on that. But what I can say, having hormones around my body, is that the next step of embodiment, which is the next books I'm going to be writing about, is the process of how you do it. And that is also through conscious massage and meditation and healing meals. And what I can say is that when you learn that the food that you eat will affect you in ways that will shift you far more than you ever realized, that makes a difference. After I got ill, and I was a yogi, and everyone said, "You, how could you become ill?" And I said, "Me, how could I become ill?" And it took me to a deeper level in myself about understanding about food. And so I realized that a lot of the things that I thought were hormonal changes were in fact the fact that I was having hot flashes in my liver because I was eating too much processed food, and I wasn't having enough fruits and vegetables and leafy greens, and not having my 20 ounces of celery juice every morning, which is what I drink. And everyone who knows me makes fun of me with that until they do it themselves, and then they see the difference. But that shifts a lot. So that I would say that would help you. Okay. Yes.
What would you say is the role of self-awareness in the journey of embodiment?
Completely. Absolutely. But self-awareness is all about that. Because the more self-aware you are, well, the more you embody, the more self-aware you become. It's natural. It's a reaction to.
So they're reinforcing it.
So they reinforce, and that's the magic of embodiment. Is the deeper you go, then the more self-aware you become, the less you have anxiety, the better you can sleep, the more you want to eat healthy food. And so everything becomes reinforcing upon each other. And so you start realizing that everything that's happening in your life is for you and not to you. No matter how difficult it is, you suddenly realize that there's a reason behind that. Maybe it's to bring you to a place within yourself that you didn't realize. But self-awareness is key, absolutely key. Yes?
To conclude, because we're running a bit late, what is the one thing that is practical as an advice that you want everyone here to take home with them, so that if they feel they're starting to go out of kilter, they can kind of go back to that to try and improve the situation a bit?
Great. I would say it's the magic of the reset. Stop. Reset. So if you think you're going out of kilter, stop. Take a breath. And let the breath go. Do it 3 times, slowly. And just see what that gives you. Another thing I would say is don't be too long online. Take a break. Go for a walk. Go into nature. Let the embodiment happen. Feel your feet. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll go for a walk and I'll say, feel my feet, feel my feet, feel my feet. And then I can start feeling my feet. So the mind, and just to let you know that the mind, you have to start ignoring all the stuff that your mind is going to tell you about this. It's going to tell you it's rubbish, that it's nonsense, that you can't, why are you wasting your time doing all that? That is your mind. Your mind does not want you to go into your body. So, incorporate tiny little things, I suggest them in my book, into your daily life so that you have little daily practices. Even if you're going to buy a newspaper or you're going to do a coffee, do that consciously. Say, right, I'm drinking my coffee every day, but this is the time with myself. And become aware. Don't always be doing the next thing. You don't have to always be doing the next thing or doing something on the way to something. That's how the mind works. You're actually, if you're making tea, you're making tea. If you're washing the dishes, you're washing the dishes. If you're talking to a friend, you're talking to the friend. Turn your phone off. And you'll find, even though there's this rebel inside of you that hates it, you'll become more calm. You don't have to know what's happening in the news, sorry, Vicky, 24 hours a day. Because it'll upset you. You can always take a break from that. And you'll still be able to be informed. Okay? Great. Well, thank you so much. Not having done a book launch before, I didn't realize that normally it's good to have someone there with the books all the time. So I didn't realize that. So if you'd like to buy a book, I'll be there and I'll be signing copies for you. If you don't have the time or whatever, then, you can just always write me a note and we can figure that out later. I don't want you to kind of scurry off if you'd like to buy a book. And just to let you know also that the drinks are being served, is that intentionally, because this is part of the health side of me, is not always just having wine, but there's the hibiscus cocktails, there's mocktails, there's hot wine, actually hot apple cider, so all of those are very good for you. Take advantage of them, drink them, and enjoy yourselves. And thank you so much for coming.
Okay, and then one more quick thing. There's going to be we have a wonderful videographer